Insulin is a new medicine that makes it possible for thousands of boys like you who have diabetes to live and play just like other boys.
The epoch-making discovery of Doctors Banting and Best, the all-essential insulin, which has made life possible for the diabetic, old or young.
This new genetically engineered insulin has two distinct advantages. It shouldn't give the side effects that can come with the present form, and it shouldn't begin to run short, as the present type will in just 20 years from now.
That young women between the ages of 15 and 34 are the worst at managing their diabetes, with many not visiting their doctor for the most basic checks.
My name is Meg, and my girlfriend has type 1 diabetes. When we first met, I knew they were wearing a Dexcom because I had a friend who also had type 1 diabetes. And I saw it on their arm. I asked about it, and she said, yeah, I have type 1 diabetes.
My name is Elizabeth, and I am 20.
How old were you when you were diagnosed?
19? Yes. It was a very slow diagnosis, so I was prepared over like a year and a half. I had low blood sugar for a while, and then one day I had a really high blood sugar. And then they were like, well, got some bad news for you. School and diabetes are probably the worst combination of it all. Especially like long tests, not knowing like, is that a text message coming through or is like, you're about to die. That's like probably like one of my most noticeable ones. Other than that, just the stress of school, and then you got your stress of diabetes and stress of everyday life. It all doesn't add up.
Sometimes I feel like I'm almost nagging my partner about their sugar because it so easily goes high, and taking insulin is not always convenient for them. That's a busy schedule. So sometimes I'm like, hey, like, you gotta take insulin. Like, have you taken insulin? Why is your sugar so high? And so that can almost feel like nagging. So I have to kind of come, at it in a certain angle that makes them more receptive to making changes and taking care of themselves. So I have the Dexcom app on my phone, and a lot of the time I can see their blood sugar numbers, and so if I see that it's going really high, I will text them and be like, hey, like, you need to take insulin, and they're like, okay, fine. So a lot of the time it's just being a support system for them when they don't feel like taking on this other part of their life and, just want to be normal. So it's always being a supporter.
Who are your main sources of support in your diabetes?
Probably my mom, my doctors, and then I have actually a couple friends and close family members that are also diabetic, so we all stick together and hope for the best outcome.
It's important to be patient because it's not easy for anyone. It's not easy for the person with diabetes or their partner. I would say just be prepared for literal highs and lows, and just to support them if they're feeling frustrated, if they're feeling overwhelmed, because managing highs and low blood sugar is quite difficult. Like, you can be in control, but you're never really in control.
You have to think before you eat. You have to count your carbs. What is your sugar? You sometimes want something super sugary or super pasta carbs, and you can't have it. Other times it's it wakes you up in the middle of the night. It's a 24-hour thing all the time, no breaks. A routine, I've definitely learned to you've got to look at your blood sugar in the morning and not just get up and go about your morning. That was my worst habit.
Have there been instances where you've had to educate others about diabetes to create awareness or understanding in social situations?
Definitely. I think, wherever we go somewhere, if we don't want to do anything fun, go to an amusement park or, go somewhere like a concert, we can't bring a bag. it's always like, oh, like, no, my partner has type 1 diabetes. Like, they have to have sugar on them. They have to have their phone, which has all their blood sugar, like, numbers and everything. Like, and most of the time they're pretty understanding, but if not, I'll either, you know, educate, but for the most part, they do a pretty good job explaining what type 1 diabetes is and advocating for themselves.
I'm constantly on my phone. People think, like, you're texting. No. I'm usually just, like, looking at my sugar and what I've done to myself in the last 24 hours.
Thankfully, we haven't had any major emergencies. Their diabetes is pretty well managed. But if an emergency were to occur where they were super low, obviously I would call 911, but I would give them their nasal stuff that goes in their nose, and that gives sugar if they're unconscious, but if they're extremely high, I would still, like, take them to the hospital, and we would definitely give insulin. Thankfully that hasn't happened yet.
The worst was I was so low. I was, I think, in the low 40s. I didn't wake up because when I go low I get tired. So it happened overnight. So I didn't wake up to my low alarm. So I just, like, kept dropping. And then, like, by the time, like, someone else got the alert, because when, like, the alerts from your CGM go to other people, they're not as obnoxious. By the time someone else realized, I was pretty low for a while, and it took a lot to come out of it. So that one was not fun, and that one was actually pretty scary. My mom's a paramedic. She was at work and sent a paramedic that is closer to my house into my house to wake me up.
I think, like, going into the medical field, as I want to be a PA, it's really good knowledge to have of, you know, kind of like first-hand experience with how difficult it is to manage a chronic illness, and just to kind of have empathy for people when I do start working. So it's taught me, you know, a lot about the endocrine system, but also about how to, like, have empathy for my future patients. We haven't had a ton of challenges. It's more just about being prepared in every scenario, like having sugar, having apple juice in, like, my car, next to my bed, making sure that she has extra supplies, extra Omnipod in, like, my house, just in case she forgets. And whenever we eat anything, we always have to make sure that we account for enough insulin. Yeah, it's not that bad.
The toughest part right now is the uncertainty of the future. There's no possible biological way that I could just remain right now in the same condition that I'm in. I can either go completely blind, or there can be a cure where my vessels will hold together a little bit better, and I'll be able to, you know, be off insulin or something. But there's no possible way I could stay the same as I am right now.
There was one time where we had gone out and they had consumed alcohol, and whenever they consume alcohol, that's a little bit scary because with type 1 diabetes, like, their sugar goes high and then low really, really fast. They had drank so much that they weren't able to eat anything without throwing it up. And that was really scary because their blood sugar was already 70, going down 60, and I was not letting them fall asleep until they were at least at 90. And even that's getting kind of low.
When I drink alcohol, I will get, like, after lows where after a couple hours of drinking, I'll experience, like, a terrible low, and then I really don't know how to function at all because you got alcohol and then you got a low blood sugar, and it's not a fun time.
And then another time I was concerned was when they had gone to the doctor and had gotten their A1C checked, and it was a lot higher than it had been before. And when you have diabetes, you have almost like a cutoff for your A1C before you can't drive anymore, just because of the consequences. And your A1C is like a decent predictor of your health. And when it was so high, I was worried that they were gonna not be able to drive, you know, they were gonna have poor health consequences long term.
And under new European legislation, 2 severe hypo attacks in 1 year would mean a person with type 1 or type 2 diabetes who takes insulin would have their license revoked. This was an experiment to simulate as near as possible a severe hypoglycemic attack, that is, when your blood sugar levels drop. This was at the extreme end of the scale. When my driving was analysed, it was worse than being drunk. And the fact is, there is no evidence to show that diabetics cause more accidents than anyone else, but there is a concern that unless the rules are changed again, people will not discuss their condition with doctors for fear of losing their licence.
My friends were like clueless. We did grow up with like a lot of my close friends. One of my cousins that I mentioned earlier got diagnosed when we were in 5th grade, so we grew up with her, so she educated us a lot. But at the same time, it's completely different living with it than just being like knowing about it.
For the most part, people either know everything or they know nothing. Like, they either think that you're not supposed to eat sugar, or you're just great about managing diabetes. And I think for a lot of type 1 diabetics, like, their blood sugar numbers fluctuate so much, and I think it's almost a misconception that like their numbers are always perfect.
I hated needles before. Absolutely hated them.
Diabetes made you braver.
Yeah, it did make me pretty brave.